So, a very, very good evening to all of you, my friends and lovely seniors on this platform today. As you all know, we've huddled together to hear of this wonderful world class program, something by the name of the Friendship Bench. Now, the Friendship Bench, as we all know, is a psychological intervention where many in Zimbabwe and now across the globe as well receive mental health care. And the most striking feature of this program is that it's community based, community driven. And what's more, we're having seniors, yes, seniors and grandmoms just like you at the forefront who is driving this, delivering this mental health care to many. Grandmoms, cognitive behavioral therapy, and peer support and community. To bring this all of it together, we have in our midst today, happy to have you, Ruth Verhey. She is the co-developer to the Friendship Bench program since the last 12 years and more. Now, besides, Ruth holds a master's in clinical and educational psychology from Germany, and she holds a PhD from the Stellenbosch University. Now, I know she wears a lot of hats, so I'm sure from on-ground implementation, she's also building the program materials. I'm sure continuing with the research, etc. But she's been very pivotal and very passionate about building the peer support component of the Friendship Bench program. She's also very passionate about understanding PTSD, or as we know it, post-traumatic stress disorder in those living with HIV. So, Ruth, all of us have come in today, opening our hearts and mind to stay inspired, and we can't wait to hear what you have to share with us in all of these years of experience with the Friendship Bench program. Over to you.
Oh, thank you so much, Jacinta. Well, good evening. So for me, it's good afternoon still, but it's so nice. So when I heard about your project, I got so excited and I'm like, yes, of course, I want to come and speak. It's so beautiful to see all your smiling faces. And thank you for wanting to listen to our story. That's fantastic. So I will start to share my screen. Oh, Jacinta, you need to enable me, please.
Sure.
And then I just have a bit of a presentation for you with lots of photos, because I thought that's important for you to envision what life is like. And you heard already, I'm personally from Germany. I grew up in Germany and I've lived in Zimbabwe for, I think, more than 16 years now or something. So my Zimbabwean friends say I'm part of Zimbabwe now. So yeah. Let me share my screen and start sharing. Okay, wait, I just have to find the right buttons. Okay, right buttons. So I hope you can see this. I think you should be able to see this, right? Okay, so we're talking about, like Jacinta said, we're talking about community-based mental health care. And the whole idea of why we need community-based mental health care is that obviously a lot of us are dealing with mental health issues, and we actually speak about common mental disorders, and we mean things like depression and also there's stress disorders, something like post-traumatic stress disorder, for instance, if things happen to us. And I hope my internet will last. Sometimes I might disappear a little bit and then it catches again. So we recognize the need to help people with mental health issues. And not only do we have to help them when they have it, we also have to help prevent it in general. And to help prevent mental health issues is not an individual feat. This has to be done in the community. And I was actually reading an interesting publication the other day where they looked at the understanding of depression in sub-Saharan Africa. And the model, and I could imagine that in many places in the world, it's similar for the normal public that is not mental health trained. we have this understanding of, if I have a lot of conflict, if a lot of terrible things happen to me, if my relationships are terrible, if I'm very, very poor forever and I don't know how to feed my children or how to pay the rent, that can result in us developing things like depression and anxiety, right? So if it's the thing is that people need to learn about mental health issues, and that's when we can help people understand better, we can in return reduce stigma. And as you can all imagine, the problem with stigma is that it stops people from seeking help. And we know, I guess, just like with other illnesses, if we don't get help on time, things can get worse. Not everything will go away by itself. And especially, as Jacinta said, I work a lot with people who have suffered trauma, and there's a saying that time will heal all wounds, and it's actually not true for someone who has got what we would call a diagnosis of post-traumatic stress disorder. They will probably never get better just by themselves, because in fact they will actually get worse as they will produce more and more avoidance behavior. Just don't think about it, let's not go there where something reminds me of it. So the likelihood of them getting worse is much higher than them getting better without any help. Now, in our setting, and I understand in India it's similar, but not as bad as with us in sub-Saharan Africa, we've got very few mental health professionals. We talk about a ratio of 1 million people to one mental health professional. And you can imagine how mental health professionals like psychologists like me or psychiatrists like my colleague, I mean, how many people can we see on a daily basis, and make an impact in their lives? So this doesn't work. So the idea is, and it's similar in many of the low and middle income countries, to actually build the mental health component into existing primary healthcare. And so I understand that in India, you also have a very well-functioning primary healthcare system for people to go to as like first port of call before maybe getting referred on. And in our setting as well, we spoke about HIV. As you know, it's very high prevalence in Southern Africa. And we also heard and studied that when people have HIV and are required to take their medication regularly, and then they suffer from depression and anxiety, that might worsen their condition, because they might not look after themselves well, and not after their family and their children, for instance. So it's really important to help those who suffer from chronic diseases. And actually, I should just talk about diabetes and hypertension as well, because those are as well require that people look after themselves, and they will do less of that if they feel bad or sad or have no more motivation. So the Friendship Bench, I understand you probably saw the little video that explained a little bit. So we are offering a service that is based on problem-solving therapy. And problem-solving therapy is just a technique to help someone who probably feels really, really overwhelmed with all the problems that seem like one big problem. And in problem-solving therapy, we're trying to teach people to say, wait a minute, can't we take little pieces out of what seems like the big problem? And then we just work on the little pieces of problems. And then we learn how to solve one little problem after the next, until we get really good in detecting little problems that are solvable and get a sense of self-efficacy, feel more like we're in control of things. And that helps people. So we're working with grandmothers like you are. And we're addressing cases, what we call mild to moderate depression. So the grandmothers are also trained to refer on if someone has a much more severe presentation and needs, for instance, medication or another assessment on that level. Okay, at the same time, we're trying, as Friendship Bench, as our organization, we're trying to do a lot of, as I said before, advocacy and sensitization around the theme of mental health. And if you ever happen to come across our website, please have a look. We decided as well, because in our setting a lot of people do struggle with extreme poverty, that a group support would be good. And in the group support, we introduced an income generation component as well, just to empower people. So the psychological term for that is actually you behavior activate someone, so you actually get them out to do things. So I'm sure you all have met in your life someone who's been so severely depressed that they never wanted to do do anything anymore. And maybe you tried really hard to get them to go for a walk at least, or get them to see someone, see their children or family or someone, a friend. And that's really complicated. And we thought if we can have groups where people who have gone through the process of Friendship Bench can support each other, that would be a safe place to be in. Good, so where's Zimbabwe? So just that little green dot in Southern Africa. We're landlocked, no beaches whatsoever. I mean, we've got lakes and rivers, of course, with lots of crocodiles and lots of wildlife. We're just on the side, and right now we're in the rainy season, or towards the end of our rainy season. So we're going slowly into preparing for winter. We've got 15 million people living in Zimbabwe, and of those, 68% live in the rural areas, how we call that. So, and look at the numbers of 7 million are living in extreme poverty, and the COVID pandemic has worsened this, as has a series of droughts in the past 2-3 years, which literally endangered the food production for Zimbabwe. So we have done a study many years ago, and we found that of those people who come to the primary care clinics, up to 30% have something that we call kufungisisa, which is basically the equivalent for depression. It means, literally translated, thinking too much. And I think it's a beautiful description for us to understand what happens. Any of you maybe might have had that experience of waking up at night and worrying and worrying and worrying, and your thoughts can't stop and you can't sleep. And that is this thinking too much. And if that happens for more than 2 weeks, alongside with a lot of other symptoms, we do speak about someone having depression or anxiety. So what's great, I always want to put that out, is that we've reached the UN AIDS targets. So 90%, the idea was 90% of the people are tested and know their status for HIV. 90% of those people are taking medication, and 90% of those have less of the HIV virus in their system. And we've got that, which is fantastic, because then the virus cannot be transmitted that easily. Good. Okay, so I've been talking about that already, the thinking too much. And if you now, with thinking too much, probably develop a headache, or you feel it as a headache, you might go to your clinic, you might speak to the nurse and say, I've got a headache. And if the nurse has no idea about mental health, she might not ask, or he might not ask more, but give you a painkiller and send you home. So on the other side, and people then learn, of course, I mean, that didn't help, right? I got a painkiller, I got sent home, my problems are still there. So they probably feel, why should I ever go again? And if you remember when I spoke about the stigma before, many people would actually really hesitate of talking about that feeling of being overwhelmed, of not knowing how to carry on, or mentioning that they have thoughts of killing themselves, taking their lives, because they feel there is no way out. That is still highly, highly stigmatized, and therefore we really want to break that stigma. Okay, so, and I'm always wondering, how different is this in other settings? So if I look back at where I grew up in Germany, where I guess there's so many therapists, there's so many like big healthcare plans, etc., and yet people will feel very, very down, and people do kill themselves because of not having gotten any help early enough. I mean, it's tragic. It's definitely these common mental disorders can be found anywhere in the world. Anybody can get them. It does not matter whether we're poor or rich or whatever beliefs we have. So we all have to be aware of those. Good. So the current COVID situation, like we spoke quickly. So the Friendship Bench was offered at the clinics. So people who came to the clinics had the chance to right away also sit on a bench and chat to a counselor. Now the COVID restrictions saw to the clinics being closed except for emergency or medication collection. So that part of the Friendship Bench now suddenly was stopped. And people who maybe just randomly went to the clinic, saw that, took it up, or heard in a health talk in the morning about the service and took it up, now don't have it that easy to find the service providers, the grandmothers. So we also had to think about that and say, oh, we have to really advertise this well. So people who want to talk to a grandmother actually find the grandmothers. And then at the same time, we thought, but the grandmothers are elderly people, and they are therefore in the risk group for this virus. And and we can't be telling them to keep seeing people very closely. And so we tried to devise a way to doing it over the phone. And I've been talking a lot, we need to all look after our own mental health. So I just suggest that everybody takes a deep breath, or maybe two, and maybe just for a moment. I know you're in full learning mode here, but just imagine that right now you're allowing yourself to think of a loved person. Or you might think of a beautiful place that is really meaningful for you. Just notice how your breath flows and how you have this visual impact of maybe the loved person, or maybe the beautiful, meaningful space, place that you might have been to, or that you just imagine. Just observe as you keep breathing that you somewhat get calmer. And just imagine with this moment of time out, you're allowing yourself to also take in some new energy. You've had a long day already. Maybe it's been warm outside. You said the sun is shining. I'm sure it was warm. And you're slowly settling down for an evening. Maybe you have plans. And just take this moment of allowing yourself to take in some more energy before you close your day. That's wonderful. We always want to make time for our mind, and we want to learn to work with our mind by being able to pull up beautiful scenes, beautiful thoughts that empower ourselves. Great. And now you notice that my voice is changing again, and I go back to our presentation. So everybody who's maybe had eyes closed, just open them again. Maybe you need to stretch, look around where you are. And here I carry on. So this is, you now finally see some of our grandmothers on the phone. And when we said to the grandmothers, look, you can take the phone to communicate with your clients, that meant, of course, we had to train them over the phone because we also couldn't see them. So here you can see some of them taking pictures of themselves, or someone took pictures of themselves, of them when they were learning how to do things, what to pay attention to on the phone, because you can imagine if you speak to someone on the phone, you don't have that direct contact. You might only have the voice, or in our case, because sometimes connectivity is bad, people have very little money we call it data bundles, for instance, or to send SMS. That means people might be texting on WhatsApp. So then we have even less input from the person we are communicating with. So here's Gogo Zivakai. She's one of our oldest grandmothers, and the grandmothers, I'm just quickly to say that their job is called their health promoters. And we get often asked why we work with elderly women. And then we always have to say that was more by default. It just happened. These people, like Gogo Shivakai, probably took up her job maybe 40 years ago, I would say, after what we call when Zimbabwe became Zimbabwe, when Zimbabwe became independent. And this primary healthcare system was set up with the idea of health promotion. And so she grew old on her job. So you can just imagine what an enormous amount of experience she has and skills that she learned over time. And so part of her job, besides Friendship Bench and talking to clients, is to create awareness around cholera or vaccination drives for babies, or just anything that happens basically that is health related. Okay, so here you can see again, clients might come with their children, and often the grandmothers will also follow up, particularly on the care for babies. So they will ask, have you been to measure the baby and weigh the baby? And as we know, I'm sure you've all heard of something called postnatal depression, which is also very common and stigmatized and underdiagnosed, because mothers, especially new mothers, would feel very, very bad about having this feeling of, I don't want to be with my baby, I don't have any energy, to the extent of, can someone take the baby away, when everybody in society expects them to be so happy and so excited about having this little baby, and they really feel everything but that. And can you imagine the shame and the guilt in a young mom with postnatal depression. And if then there's nobody who helps them with an empathetic way and non-judgmental, terrible things can happen, right? So it's very important that the lay health workers are really these grandmothers for their clients. Okay, so task shifting is a bit of a technical term, but I thought I'll put it in anyways. It's basically going back to that idea of we do not have enough trained professionals. So what do we do if we don't have enough trained professionals? Can we take parts of the job out and teach it to someone who could do that, who is then supervised and ongoingly trained, and then the specific job can be done? And it's very, very common in low and middle income countries for a lot of things, even to the extent of delivery of babies, vaccinations, mini kind of operations, all sorts of things are being done in the health world. Yeah, and we understand it's important to really teach people well. And actually in our ongoing work in Friendship Bench, where we do a lot of research as well, we constantly get, I guess, challenged. You know, we can never sit back and say, oh, but I've taught you once, you know how to do it. It doesn't work that way, especially in counseling in general, when, first of all, experience matters and counts. So not only personal experience, but also experience in dealing with clients and getting all the different stories of clients. And if actually we do not supervise and give ongoing training, there's countless evidence that what happens, and it's called program drifting. So basically the person who was once trained will slowly move away and might even end up doing something different, not on purpose. It's just like we forget little things and we develop our own style, and we end up doing something fully believing we're doing what we were taught. And in some cases that might even better the job, but in some cases it might end up for people actually doing something different from the original training. Okay, so what we find extremely important, and it's, when I look at the literature, there is not much. So we have a lot of task shifting. Everybody talks about task shifting, you know, because it's also cost effective for governments, for instance, but we're lacking to see the community health workers. That's what CHW stands for, sorry, community health workers, as experts. Go back to what I said with Gogo Siwakai. If she had worked for 40 years plus, I mean, what an expert is she, right? And she, in her ability to wander around in her community. I mean, she's basically a social worker, if you come to think of it. She's an outreach person, you know? So especially now as the clinics have closed, she lives in the community she works in. She knows the people who live in the community. She knows the history of the community. She probably knows generations by now, you know? And so she's a huge part of this community strengthening process. And often that is overlooked. These people have leadership skills. They have an authority. They can tell their clients basically what's okay and what's not okay, and they're recognized as that as well. You know, through their long-term presence, they're incredibly credible, and they do create that. Well, they are playing a role of change bringing. You know, so they often say they are the first to be approached because they're the most approachable. But unfortunately, they're often not included in higher level policy making, decision making, and we're trying to change that as well. Good. So we, like I said before, what we figured out, if communities are not aware of a service, are not aware of mental health and mental health issues that people can have, it doesn't work, right? So we have to put a lot of effort into mobilization, and we're doing a lot of social media work with that. And also right now we are on the radio quite regularly here in Zimbabwe. We give talks like this one to people who are interested, like you. Yeah. So, and this is, I mean, look at this beautiful picture. So this is, remember how I spoke about the group support and the income generation? And you can see that all these women, these are again all women, and that's another point. Women are better at health-seeking behavior. Would you agree with me? Like, it is harder to get men to agree that they get checked or to admit that they have a problem. It's like, we women are better. And I bet you that is also something to do because we are responsible for other people's health, right? Like maybe our partners, but also definitely our children's. We were the ones who had to take the little babies to the clinic, right? So the system is very, very known to us. So these bags are all made out of recycled plastic in any form. If you look to the far right, the black ones, the very, very dark black ones, they're actually made out of those old VHS tapes. Do you remember those VHS tapes from when we watched videos, those big cassettes? So we broke them apart and people crocheted these bags in any shape or form. I mean, look at how creative people are here. And the idea then was to sell these bags. And we have a lot of stories where they actually sold these bags for maybe a couple of dollars, and we're able to get some food for their children. I mean, we have some stories of where some women did that so well that they started little businesses. So I remember one woman telling us she sold a few bags, kept money back as much as she could, and then she started like a mini kiosk where she was selling like little chewing gums and cookies on the side for the school children who ran to school in the mornings. And so she kind of had some money to start this business and then to keep it rolling, right? And someone else told us that she managed to start a little, like a nursery school in her garden or in one of the rooms of her houses. So that's quite beautiful, we thought. And of course, there's this community strengthening aspect. Then we felt as well, Zimbabweans are farmers at heart. I mean, like everybody is out. It doesn't matter where in the urban areas you live. So people will plant something. And our main staple is maize. So people will plant maize, and soon as harvesting of maize, so people would be very happy. And we thought, can't we do this as well? Can't we teach people about permaculture basically, and how to make with the smallest space to create a garden, a community garden, or like an urban garden? I mean, there are a lot of those things, and I don't know in what areas you live, but I'm sure you've heard about these things. And so, as you can see, this is an area of a clinic. So we're very lucky that we have a lot of space, and a primary healthcare clinic might actually have quite a big garden around. So the nurses, as you can see here, the lady in the white uniform, she was actually giving us the approval to dig her garden, and she also got produce from the garden. One problem, though, when we have dry season is there's always an issue to find enough water for plants to grow. Okay, so this is our initiative where we say women come together, and we are always welcoming men as well. It's just that there are always more women come and learn about gardening and get a better diet for yourself. And then we have another component, because we should not forget the young people, right? Where we specifically adjusted the program for young people. And we felt, young people don't come to the clinic. Again, there's stigma. They don't want to be seen at the clinic. There's also still a lot of stigma around HIV. So if you're young and you're seen at the clinic and you don't have a baby with you, or you're obviously pregnant, are you maybe living with HIV? And still, although we've had now 30 years of living with HIV and learning about HIV and having medication finally for HIV, people still feel they do not want to really say this or be seen. So we felt, would it be easier if the young people are being counseled by younger people compared to the grandmothers? And if that's happening maybe somewhere else, not at the bench, maybe it's happening on the street, maybe we're going for a walk. So a little bit what I had said earlier, what COVID may basically forced us to do for the grandmothers as well, as they now do a lot of the work at the market, at the field, in the garden, at their house, in front of their house, because the clinics are closed, as you might remember. Okay, so this has been very successful. And we also felt in collaboration with the youth that we worked with that other themes were important. And a lot of themes were around sexuality, which is a big taboo in our society. So youth would not be able to access knowledge and speak to someone who's non-judgmental and trained in listening skills and just with empathy and helps the client. Okay, so the CKT here is they didn't want to make bags, which we can understand, but they wanted to play ball and hang out and sing and dance. And so our goal to create a safe place where people can be together without being influenced by, well, substances or gangs or crime or just stress, was an attempt to offer those groups for young people. Again, we know it's easy to say we can do this, and it's always these kind of initiatives do need some kind of money, or they need someone who puts a lot of personal effort in it. So it's always touch and go, and we need to make sure that these offers can be carried by the participants as well, which is not easy because young people are in transient positions. They would have to go somewhere where there might be a job, so they might move, they might go back and live with the relatives because the parents can't take care of them anymore, or vice versa. It's not easy to keep groups together. Okay, so then I'm going back to this. You all seem to be tech experts using Zoom, which is fantastic. And in Zimbabwe, as I said, most people only have access to WhatsApp. So the majority of people, I would say, because that's the cheapest way of using a social media kind of tool, to share information, to communicate. Of course, they do Facebook and things, but probably because of the internet being quite costly to use, so people don't have Wi-Fi at home. So we thought, okay, how can we reach people again, and how can we make people participate and discuss? So we've created these WhatsApp groups where people that's run every week for an hour, and diverse topics are being discussed. So that's been quite successful as well, and we got a lot of good feedback. Wait a minute, what's happening? Okay, and then we have adapted the program to other places. So we are in New York City. That's very exciting for us that they took up our program to adapt it to theirs, and they are in some of the poorer communities in New York City with a lot of immigrant background people, and it's going very well. And it's that same approach of a lot of outreach and connection and making people feel like they belong and they're listened to. And then we're in Zanzibar, which is an island of Tanzania. So it belongs to Tanzania, but it's like I guess it's called the Indian Ocean there. And we're in Malawi, another kind of country really close by. All of these countries have, well, except New York City is not a country, but Malawi and Zanzibar also have high prevalence of HIV, also have high prevalence of poverty and gender-based violence, and definitely an under offer of mental health services. So we were very happy to collaborate with the government there to bring these. Yeah, and it was interesting, as you can see, we had to translate into different languages and take into account different cultural approaches, which I personally find so exciting to learn about. Yes, and then I just thought I'll show you some of these lovely future people who will hopefully come to the Friendship Bench before they are suffering from anything, because for them, hopefully the world is going to be normalized, that we talk about how we feel and we talk about what we need to feel like we belong, and we are being active players in creating these safe spaces for each other. Okay, so I stop here. So I've got a few questions, Jacinta. I don't know how you want me to do this best. I'd love to have hear a little bit from people. Is that something? I'll just stop sharing for a moment. Ooh, it doesn't work. Stop sharing. Okay, have I stopped sharing? Or are you still seeing the screen?
We still see it. The smiley face.
Okay, now it worked. I was like clicking on it and nothing worked. And I'm like, what's happening? Okay. Sorry, technology. I'm just lost right now here a little bit. I have to find you again. Where
Don't
are
worry.
you? Okay.
Quite okay.
Hello. My computer does what it wants. Okay. So I don't know if you have any questions, or should we discuss a little bit, or what would you like?
Are there any burning questions or immediate reaction or feedback that anybody has? If we do, then possibly you could just immediately take that. And otherwise, we'll jump right into what Ruth has to, share and hear from us.
Yeah. You can always also put it in, or put it in the chat box. If anybody doesn't want to speak now, that's completely fine. So I was curious. Oh my goodness, my computer just does what it wants right now. Sorry. I was curious about you. Sorry. This is when you have lots of screens open. You are all people with so much life experience. And I was wondering what you would say, what you want other people to learn from you.
Okay.
And how would you want them to learn that from you?
Yeah, so I think Mary has put up a question, Ruth. Do you train the grandmothers?
Mm-hmm. Yes, we train them. So sorry, I left that out. So we train them quite extensively on what we call counseling skills. So the whole idea of how do you listen to someone non-judgmentally? How do you stop yourself when you want to tell someone what to do because you think you know what they should be doing, right? Which I guess we're all good at. But in this particular approach, it's all about getting the other person to find their own solution and to tell you through your questions how they're going to do that. You know, that's kind of about the accountability. You basically say, okay, when are you going to do this? And how are you going to do this? And by when are you going to feed back to me that you've done it? You know, like you literally want them to pin themselves down to doing what they said they would do. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Actually, adding from that, Ruth, what I do understand is that what is primarily used in all of these, the talk, is something called the PST, which is a problem solving therapy. And so, can you share something about that? And does one, like anybody, say out of us here, seniors, can they just suddenly tomorrow get up and practice PST on somebody who they feel need it?
In principle, you could, you know, I'm sure you could watch a few YouTube videos and learn how to do it, you know, and some of you might do these things already, you know. So what our dream is that in future we actually have trainings running all over the place, you know. So we're not in Goa yet, but we'd love to come to Goa. But then on the other hand, you've got Sangat, you know. I think Sangat probably covers the mental health needs of Goa already in some form or other, you know. But I mean, one day in the future, we hope that we can even like we have like almost like a training program online where you could just sign up and follow. But it's a style of picking, I always say, picking the client up where they are, right? So if I come in and I say, oh my God, everything is terrible, nothing works, my first port of call is to say, wow, that must be hard for you, right? If we go in there and say, come on, you know, you shouldn't be crying, what's your problem? You know, you've got something to eat, you have a house, you know, then we're basically invalidating the suffering of that person. So it's important just to acknowledge, wow, that's a lot on your plate. Can you tell me more, you know? And then maybe help that person to say, okay, I've heard that's complicated and this issue is difficult for you. And here you don't know what to do. And then we could say, maybe we can pick out one of these things and let's discuss that. Tell me more about it. And we all know now from enough psychological research that if we start speaking about something, it starts to be more coherent. I mean, if you want to go into the brain parts, if we feel we're kind of in the right hemisphere of the brain, but if we speak, we move it over to the left side of the brain. We give it kind of the logic based on what we've learned in our lives, obviously, but we give it something that becomes more how do I say that? Like it becomes more concrete in a way because we have to give it words. We also have to reduce it. Like the masses of terrible thoughts explained in 10 minutes are now reduced to the 10 minutes, right? And not 100,000 hours of worrying anymore, you know? And that is already a great way of helping someone by just getting them to talk, which means we have to create this you're safe with me. Confidentiality is a huge part of this, right? Like we are all worried. If I tell you my story, what are you going to do? You know, are you going to tell your neighbor? Are you going to tell my parents? Are you going to tell my children? I don't know, whatever it is. So confidentiality is one of those majorly important parts that we teach our counselors. And then this non-judgmental approach of like, just be there. What you believe is your belief. You picking up the client that the client is, their belief counts, right? So it's, I mean, I work as a psychotherapist as well, and it is not about me when I talk to a client, right? So the client sees my professional me, but in my private time, I might be very different, you know? But that's not the point. It's about creating that space where someone feels, oh, I feel safe enough to just talk a little bit here, you know? And then if we can sort of ask some more questions, maybe because we are naturally curious anyways, and the person kind of talks and talks and talks. And you know how sometimes people get this, oh, I have an idea. You know, that's basically what problem solving is about. That the person gets this idea, oh, I could do this, or why haven't I thought of that? Or something that's what you want to elicit. And then you can say, oh, cool, how are you going to do that? What's going to stop you from doing that? What's maybe, is it feasible? Are there barriers that you have to think of, you know? And then you basically, you've done problem solving therapy with someone. Sounds simple, right?
Wow. That's a great idea and connection for us.
Yeah, but I think creating connection is the best. Yeah.
All right. So I think Anita, I'll just add spotlight. Anita Jarvis, you want to ask something?
Just wondered how long it took for the trained grandmothers to actually get through to the clients that they see. Is it a very lengthy process? Is it very skeptical? Is the client very skeptical to start with, which I'm sure must be the case? And how did they get progress from there?
Beautiful question. Thank you so much, Anita. This is a beautiful question. So our training is basically for someone who doesn't have any mental health or counseling background. We basically say we train you for 8 full days. We teach you all these things. We do a lot of practical work with you so that you feel a little bit more confident. And then you go out there with your first client. And now we all know people are different, right? We've all met people who are, oh, finally I can talk, and they talk and talk and talk, and you almost have to kind of stop them a little bit. And then there's the one who's like, I'm not sure I'm going to tell you anything, you know, where you have to elicit. And sometimes it also means you might never get someone to talk, or they might have to come back a couple of times, you know. So in our case, obviously, like everywhere in the world, we have who learned the process much easier, and others who probably had more problems with learning the process and are more comfortable in doing what we call this mobilization, so the outreach, mental health awareness. And they're very good at that, just explaining to people what it's all about, and that they can go and see a counselor on the Friendship Bench. So they wouldn't do the counseling themselves, but they just alert people to the services, basically, and refer them to the services. And I think it's difficult. I mean, it's difficult to say particular times or durations of breakthrough or something. What we have understood in our for many sessions to the same therapist. That's rather not happening in our setting. So people come very few times, pick up a bit of support and a bit of knowledge and a bit of problem solving, and then maybe they don't come back, or maybe they come back another time. So it's not the classical kind of let's review my whole life, or try to change everything in my life. I think, yeah, that's not what the population wants at the moment. And I think people also have a lot of barriers. It might be that they have to work, or they can't afford coming to the clinic out of some reason, or they move away. It's very transient, like I said before. Yeah, so I hope that answers your question.
It does. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Wow. If nobody has a question, I'd love to ask you another question. And then what do you need to feel comfortable to share something? If anybody would love to, I mean, or type it in the chat room.
Trust.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
My name is Sybil. Yeah, sorry, I can't be seen because of the internet problems. Okay, I mean, like from my experience, most of the people, either in the, I mean, apart from the community thing, people just want a pair of ears. You know, most people now just want somebody to listen to them. That's like then it's not so much the words as much as it's the tone of the way you speak to them. It's your body language.
Yeah.
So yeah, and
Yeah.
I mean it's the question of helplessness. Like if they have a financial problem, I mean, what do you do? Okay, you listen, but most of the problems I feel like it's a financial problem. You know, like yeah, people
It
do not
is.
have
It
enough
is
money
so
to go
often.
through their thing. And like you said, even my experience is that you have to be non-judgmental, and then because it's more when you talk to people, it's like the gossip value that they take. I mean, people just want to gossip about you. So that also stops some people from talking to you. And
Absolutely.
now, for some reason, people have been opening up to me. But what happens, Ruth, is I tend to absorb things. So, I mean, I'm just wondering how do I get rid of that? People open, okay, I listen. They go away a little lighter because they have, like, unloaded to me. Now, for me,
But
it
you
doesn't
took it.
stop there. Yeah, it doesn't stop there. Okay, I mean,
Yeah.
I'm not a
Yeah.
professional, but like I say, you
Yeah.
listen. But
Yeah.
how do I stop things? Because I tend to absorb it and it stays with me. So it's
Yeah.
kind of weighing on me in these things. So I just wanted your professional advice on that.
Yeah, that's so important. Thank you so much for sharing that experience. And I think yeah, I think we all can share that. And I think that is the big difference between a trained person on whatever level the person is trained, who can always go back to, I am using my skill, my professional skill here to work with you, versus just, I almost want to say, just a human who offers themselves as a friend, right? Like as that listening ear, as we said before. So it just, I mean, I can just give you like a tiny little guideline here. Maybe is one is, you are not the other person's problem. I mean, you don't have the other person. It is their problem, right? Like make a clear distinction between yourself and the other person. So that means if you don't have it and you are not their, okay for them. Does that make sense? So you
Yes,
basically, literally, your job is to help them. It's almost like you help them birth the solution, and a lot of people have not, or don't trust their own solution finding and solution creating skills anymore, because maybe they've always been told what to do. They were never asked, what do you want, or think, or something, because I mean, let's be frank, we do live in a world where advice giving is the norm, isn't it? You go to your doctor, the doctor tells you what to do, right? That you go to school, the teacher tells you what to do. You go to work, the work person tells you what to do there. So to live in a place where we are allowed to be creative is a dream, and we all have to work for that. So you're not part of that person's problem. It's their job. And if we actually, I want to enhance the statement even. If I solve your problem, what have you learned? Right?
yes,
So I basically took away your chance to learn something. Maybe I have done this before and I know it, whatever, but only I have made myself be like, yay, I helped her or him, but I took your chance to learn something away. And then the other thing is as well, how do I say that best, is you can only do that much, especially when it comes to money problems. I think that is like heartbreaking, right? Like if you think, wow, maybe I have food in my fridge and here's someone who's got nothing. It's something to do with that concept of learning to set boundaries. Like you have to look after yourself to be able to help others. So even if you clean out your whole fridge and give it away to poor people, then you're going to be starving tomorrow, right? So we have to learn to see what are these boundaries,
yes,
and to allow ourselves that we have to protect our own well-being, which sometimes even might say, no, I can't talk to you right now. call me tomorrow, call me next week, you know, like that's hard. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does to a big extent. Thank you. Yeah.
Good, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Great. Anybody else? Jacinta, you're in charge of time, right? Like you have to tell me.
Yeah.
We're good.
Okay, this is Barbara, and I have a question. In a small community, it is like the transition from friend to a trained, person who's ready to listen and advise you may not be feasible because, people know you for what you are. And, even with training, they might say, oh, she's not a professional, and what is she trying to tell me? Okay, so like how would we overcome that? And as you rightly said, the first kind of condition would be, don't tell anyone, don't tell anyone. That is the normal societal thing here, right? So then they would still be backward, to share maybe, because they still don't have that trust and confidence that it won't go further than you, maybe. So how would that be tackled?
So it's so interesting. So if you're talking to someone who just who either comes up and says, oh God, I have to talk, or you approach the person and you say, wow, you look like you've got a very hard time. Hey, I'm here for you, like we can offer our ear and our patience and our time and understanding. Although, will we really understand? That's a different topic. We might just be like, I am here, I'm trying to understand you, So, but to bring up the trust bit, I personally believe that trust is a decision. A lot of people say, no, you have to regain my trust, or you have to rebuild your trust, or something, I personally think that is just me being hesitant to decide, okay, I trust you, and that is based on what we have experienced in the past. And there's a beautiful concept that I think is inherent in human beings, and it's called resilience. And all we know about our brains is that we are constantly learning. We never stop learning, right? So even if a lot of things have happened and gone bad in our interpretation, we can learn new. So that's basically what therapy is about, to create new experiences where we have this, oh, this is a real good human to human connection. I feel safe. I feel validated. I feel someone is trying to listen to me. They are patient. They're not on their phone while they're listening to me, or they're not like, oh, are you done now? I have to go, which is, again, that's also part of life nowadays. And I think that's where the idea of grandmother comes in, because I think we all have this idea of grandmother has time, right? She's at home. She's maybe not working anymore, or she can hang out, which is a beautiful image. I mean, again, not all grandmothers have time. You have an appointment today here, so anybody wanted to talk to you today, you had to say, nope, later or tomorrow. So it goes back to, what are we offering, but also trusting and demanding from the person who wants to speak, to say, hey, you have to come to the table. You can speak, but you have to trust me. There's nothing I can do for you to trust me. You have to make that decision. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yes, I think so. The main thing is just to invite them to share, to be a listener, and maybe through that they will gain confidence in you.
Yeah. And you can tell them, think about, I always say to people, speak, talk, communicate, but make wise choices. I wouldn't talk to anybody,
And that would build trust after the talk. Yes, correct. Thank you.
Yeah,
thank you. Gave me some guidelines.
Super, thank you. It's fantastic.
All right. So, are there any further questions, or Ruth, if you have anything else that you want to know from our seniors, particularly here out of Goa and Bombay in India?
Oh, I'm the kind of person, I could keep talking for another 3 hours, I think, but you all have to go and have dinner and do your evening rituals. So I'm happy to stop here. That's fine. And we can always talk again if that was what you want,
In fact, I think we do have, in fact, we're really enjoying this conversation, and we'll try and balance it off. So I think, if there's any more critical questions that we wanted to know, otherwise I would like to, all right. So if there's anyone else has any questions, all right, Maurice, yes.
Yeah. Okay, if Ruth can give us an idea on how we can begin to have a friendship bench around here in our community over here. How do we start get started?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, beautiful question. That would definitely take us into another 3 hours of discussing, but no, not that bad. But I think that's definitely too much for like the next 2 minutes. We're trying to work with people, with partners for us, in places where we feel a friendship bench is needed and could make a huge difference to the community and empower people all over the place. So I will, Jacinta, it's probably the best if I give you some info and then we can start discussing around that. Okay? Yeah?
Sure. All right.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Lovely.
So that was a terrific question, actually, Maurice, because in fact I wanted to know that as well. But yeah, before we finally go, I just wanted to have some teaser questions for Ruth. And this is completely last minute. Believe me, Ruth, I didn't want to kind of keep you on spotlight there, but just a little bit more for us to know you a little bit more personally. Are you ready? I'm just scaring you.
I'm scared, but just tell me.
All right. Just a couple of 6 to 7 questions. So here it goes. The first question. If your home was going to be taken over by aliens, what would you pack in your bag before running away?
My little espresso maker.
I see. Okay. Coffee lover. Good. All right. Thank you. Complete the blanks. You can't fill in the blanks. You can't dash to save your life.
Oh. So I can't, and then I have to fill in something to save my life?
You can't dash to save your life.
I can't, something like talk enough to save my life. Okay. Something like that?
Good, that works. I know you're extremely busy and I know it's during the lockdown, but any random song that plays on your mind, it keeps coming back.
Yeah, I do have one which is really funny. The story is, it's a song that I would not like. It's some kind of US American Western song, but it's part of a children's movie that I watched with my children so many times that we can sometimes just start humming that song and start crack up laughing because it reminds us of the movie. Yeah.
Okay, all right. Great.
But I wouldn't know the name of the song or anything, It's like
you find out, your children are going to be disappointed. All right. 4 more to go. What's your poison food? So
my poison?
Yeah, something that would go to your comfort food.
Oh, my comfort food. Ooh, carrots.
Oh, wow. Amazing. Tell us, how do we feed carrots to our children, for Lord's sake? That's good. I'm sure you have to think about it. Is that Jean as well who's answering?
Yes, Jean is there as well. Ask her a question.
Yes,
So we've got our social media person online here.
Yeah. Hi there, Gina. I don't think we can see a video, but that's okay. Oh, there you are.
Hi.
Can I just add you as well? Hi, Jean. Nice to see you. Thank you for joining us.
Hello, how are you doing?
I'm fine.
Oh, it's a pleasure.
Stay from India. All right. Anyone could go for this, either Jean or Ruth. I know that Ruth does it, but what's your popular show-off yoga pose that you like to show off all the time? Maybe this one's for Ruth because I know she does yoga.
So lately we've done a lot of chaturanga.
So,
You know, the transitions.
so you self-learned, or are there, just interested to know, are there instructors in Harare?
Oh, yeah, we have lots of yoga teachers. So I've been doing a lot of Iyengar yoga, you know, from BKS Iyengar.
Oh, wow.
And so we've got a few of, well, we had one person here, and we've probably gone to Pune, to the studio, I mean, to the institute there. And yeah, and then, yeah, by now with lockdowns, a lot of video yoga, but it's home yoga, but it's nice.
Wow, that's a terrific, terrific one to start with, Iyengar yoga. What's your favorite, what about you, Jean? What's your go-to workout regime? Do you yoga also, or?
No, I don't do yoga, but I love long distance running. So I like road running in the morning. I can just like, for kilometers I can go, and I'll be happy.
How refreshing. Amazing. All right, for any one of you, if you had to go jump from a rock, who would you rather take along with you? It's a very steep rock.
Jean.
Ruth.
Oh my.
We'll go
Fast
together.
shifting, yeah, we see fast shifting here in another way.
we share the what's it called, the parachute.
All right. The final one was, what's the most repeated or featured word or statement in each of your dictionaries, in Ruth's dictionary and in Jean's dictionary? What's the repeated featured word that comes up all the time? You know, things like geez or shucks or what's something. It's always popping in your mind. Difficult.
That's really hard.
Yeah.
No, I know. Jean often. Yeah, sorry. Good.
No, go.
No, I was saying Jean often says, "Lordy Lord," you know. As if she's like quite flustered about something, so you can tell we work a lot together, and she's like, "Lordy Lord," you know. So, yeah,
Jean,
I can say
what
that.
about Ruth? You got
Ruth. I think we are often overwhelmed, and then we reach a point where we don't know what to do, and Ruth just goes, sigh. Like she doesn't even have the energy to sigh anymore, but she can say sigh.
That's wonderfully played, I must say. Thank you so much for being such a great sport. So we quickly come towards the end of this section, which I fondly call It's a Wrap. But with that, at this point, would you, Ruth or Jean, have some parting words for us, all of us here gathered in the session today?
Well, I'm so happy that you took the time to listen, and I'm like I said, I'm always happy to talk about mental health in general. And I think if we can all inform ourselves, you know, just have knowledge, so we can break with our own prejudice and stigma, and just and there's so much knowledge that comes out. I mean, even when I went to university, whenever that was, it seems like whatever I learned then is not even true anymore. So there's like, you know, if we can learn and learn and learn and try to apply it in our daily lives, and then create connections wherever you can, whether that's with a smile or like a really heartfelt and meant, how are you? Tell me, you know, and you can make a huge difference.
Yeah. Very true. I think there's nothing that life can teach us that, you know, much more than what education does for us. Yeah. That's a very great message for us. And just before we part, just a quick vote. Thanks of vote. First and foremost, I don't know whether Mr. Dixon Chibanda would be hearing this at any time, but my heartfelt gratitude and, you know, it's sort of in India, in Hindi, you say pranam, means it's like out of respect for whatever he's doing, along with all of you, Jean and Ruth, out there. So if you could pass this on to Mr. Chibanda, it would be awesome. And thank you so much to Chengetai for helping me connect through to you, Ruth. And most importantly, Ruth, for if you wouldn't have said yes, if you wouldn't have taken out this precious time from Harare and tagging Jean along today, we would have never had this pleasant opportunity to be listening and hearing from you. What an honor. Thank you. May we all...
we are honored.
So with this, thank you so much. Can we all give a round of applause? Thank you so much for all the work. Yee-hoo! For Friendship Bench. May you keep going, and hope to cross paths again. All right. Thank you so much. Goodbye. Have a great
Thank you all.
Goodbye.
Thanks. You too. Good night.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye. Thank
Bye.
you.
Thank you.